but let's do it. Welcome back to the Context Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by Dane Wissenbach, straight from Idaho, creative content producer, freelancer, former athlete, current athlete,
Yeah.
recently wed, all kinds of things we're going to find out about. Dane, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Super excited. Love what you do and can't wait to get into it.
All right, well, let's dive in here a little bit and take us through your background and your journey and anything that you find relevant to our audience, which are coaches, athletes, multidisciplinary, right? All the stuff you did. So just kind of take us through the background, through your youth, through your career, through your injury, recovery, what came next, whatever you think is relevant, and then we'll go from there.
Cool. Yeah, like a lot of people, grew up and sports was my whole life. Played football, basketball, and I ran track. And so that pretty much was a full-time year-round thing between summer ball, camps, training. It was my whole life. The goal, as for most people, is to play at the next level. That was what I wanted since I was a kid. I wanted to play college basketball. I wanted to run college track. And so in high school, I was playing at a small 3A high school and really just fell in love with the game, right? Had some touches with PGC basketball that really helped me grow my love for the game, and I decided this is what I want. And then came my senior year, arguably the most important year in high school as far as sports goes and getting recruited, and had some interest for football and had a scholarship for track. But in the second game of the football season, I went down with an injury. I was running down the field, planted my foot, and my knee gave out. Didn't know it at the time, but later found out after an MRI that I had ruptured my ACL, tore my meniscus, and they said, your senior year is over for sports. It's a 9 to 12 month recovery, and that's all. And so, kind of in an instant, my whole world kind of came crashing down. Here's this goal and this dream I have of playing at the next level, and everything was just taken away from me. And so that was probably one of the hardest things that I've gone through was having my love for the game taken. But it ended up being a really good thing because I transitioned from that to getting into videography. I said, if I can't play, I at least want to support my teammates, be on the sideline, be involved with sports. And so I picked up a camera, started making videos, and everything kind of spiraled from there, doing a lot of stuff for free, started doing stuff for other programs, started filming college football, and then got a lot of professional opportunities. And I was like, people will pay for social media, people will pay for content. And so that's kind of the route that I took after my injury. And now it's my full time career. So I've had a lot of really cool opportunities, but that's kind of some background on my journey and where I'm at.
Awesome. So I want to add something else that we're going to come back to at this point in regards to your mission and that part of your background. So don't let me forget to come back to that. But let's dive into this first part. So ACL tear meniscus, and you didn't say it was a blessing, but you said
Yeah.
something to that
Yeah.
effect, right? Where you were able to pivot out of that and turn it into something positive. There seems to be, for whatever reason, this period of time, epidemic is a strong word, but a ton of ACL injuries going on,
Yeah.
especially on the women's side of the game, right? Juju Watkins just tore hers the other day. And I got a kid on my team that's recovering. Um, and one of my good buddies' daughter just had it happen. How would you, in hindsight now, right? If you're able to jump in a time machine and go back and tell your coaches in each of those sports, tell your teammates in each of those sports, what the best way to support somebody going through that
Yeah.
would be, right? Because there's an aspect of it that's isolating. There's an aspect
Yeah.
of it that starts making you question your abilities. But if you could, kind of package in the inspirational stuff you do, like, look,
Yeah.
this is what they need to hear. This is where you need to show up for them in this moment. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah. I think it's a really vulnerable time. Um, and I'm someone who's always about let's get to the next play. Everything's going to be okay. But I think it's valuable in these moments and in any kind of negative situation in life to actually sit in that, right? Good mentor of mine, Chad Sanji, who you've had on the podcast, he shared with me, invite sadness to tea, right? And so I think for a teammate, a parent, a friend, when you have someone in your life going through anything, but specifically an ACL tear, um, they need love, right? They need some support, and they need you to believe in them, right? Because it's a time where you don't know either you've got the diagnosis and there's no hope, like your season's done, or you're not sure yet. And so where my teammates and my family really came in was they just threw their arms around me, right? They brought me into the team. They said, "Hey, we're getting you the spirit pack. We want you on the sideline. We want you for your leadership." Right? Forget, we know we're sad. We won't have you on the court or on the field, but they saw value outside of my skills, right? And that's your leadership, right? That's your energy, right? That's your perspective as a player. And so I think really bringing them in and allowing them to add value in a different way than their skills is huge.
How would you say that your experience as a multi-sport athlete has benefited your growth as a human being, as a teammate, as a competitor, as whatever else you want to throw in there? And I'm curious because the youth sports industrial complex is ruining athletics, and the
Yeah.
sports specialization push is the worst thing that can happen. And so when I run into people that have gone through the experience and the journey you have, I'm always curious on the same note how you would advise other athletes, coaches that feel like they're getting sold this bill of goods that you have to just stop everything else and do one thing. Give me your take on that.
Yeah, I wrestled with this early on. I think I was a maybe a eighth grader, and I decided I got to specialize. I need to just play basketball, right? About to go to a huge school. Maybe I don't want to do football. And I asked the NAIA coach, who I absolutely love and respect. They just won the NAIA championship. His previous team, the College of Idaho Yotes. I asked him, and I said, I don't want to get injured in football. Do you recommend I specialize? And he said, you're gonna get hurt doing all kinds of things. If you love the game, you should play it. And I love that I played three sports. I love it because on each team, each sport is a different dynamic, and it allows you to develop as a leader and as a player in different ways. For example, for track, some events, like it is a team sport, but in a race, there's nobody. It's me. It's me against everybody else. And so I learned how to support teammates who had nothing to do with my success, right? In basketball, as a young player on varsity, my job wasn't to go be the go-getter and go score 12 points a game. It was to bring energy from the bench. It was to be a leader, right? And same thing with football. So I think if you love the sport, you should play it. It's going to be good for you physically, right? You're going to be a better athlete overall, and it's going to help you develop leadership qualities that will benefit your other sports.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree. And I think ultimately, especially in the age of the professionalization of college athletics and the transfer portal, right? The pipe dream of many young children is quickly going by the wayside as if I'm a college recruiter, I'm not recruiting high school kids anymore, right? So it's like, why are you giving up those other aspects of things that make you whole?
Yeah.
To bet on a three percenter, right? So I think, yeah, sometimes you got to push your chips in, and sometimes it's like 97% of us should be doing everything we can to embrace our youth and stay young.
Yeah.
Let me pivot to this because you've had so much exposure, not necessarily as an athlete, but you definitely, right, three different seasons, multiple coaches. But since you've begun doing the freelance work. You've been around a lot of coaching minds. You've been around a lot of teachers. What are some things that you've picked up on that should you ever decide to run your own program that you're definitely going to make sure you do, right? So usually I would ask, what's the best thing you do in your program? You don't have a program, but you've
Yeah.
seen a lot of stuff. You've been around a lot of coaches, a lot of teams. What are some of those things that you would just offer listeners like, hey, listen, you should be doing X, Y, and Z for no reason other than this?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've been super blessed, especially through PGC, to be exposed to coaches and programs and philosophies. Um, and I think the best programs have the best culture, right? And um, I think one thing that I love is when programs have a culture of celebration, and a culture of belief in each other, right? Because if you don't have that, I would argue that most of the other stuff you do isn't going to matter. And so that would be the first thing is a culture of togetherness, right? And I think you can foster that many different ways. Um, and then I love the College of Idaho, for example. I was exposed to them as a young athlete going to their summer camps and got invited to be in the locker room. Um, and I think the best programs have a really high standard. They have a culture of having high standards. And I've seen it on both sides. I had a high school coach who let us slack off, who didn't make kids touch the line, right? And that trickles into every single part of the program. And so I love when you have a high standards and you have a culture of commitment. And so when when someone isn't living up to that commitment, you just circle back to this is what we set out, this is what we're not going to tolerate, this is what we're going to focus on. And so everyone knows where that line is, right? And I think when you have a good culture, you weed out people who don't want to be there, right? If you have people, athletes with bad attitudes, athletes that don't want to live at those standards, they're going to weed themselves out. They're not going to make it, right? And I think it's the job of every player, right? Every leader, the coach to set that culture and make that happen.
Yep. So taking from that, right? You've been on a lot of teams, you've been around a bunch of stuff since you were younger. Sports has obviously played a big role in your growth and development. And as an 18-year-old, I think, when you went off on your mission to North Dakota, I believe,
Yep.
and how would you say your athletic experience and the things you learned there or the things you got exposed to there served you during that mission? And
Yeah.
as a foundational question, that's kind of what I'm curious about, but big picture, like tell us about the mission. Like, where'd you go? Why? What did you get out of it? What do you now every day, not necessarily like active front of mind, but kind of like all the years you went to PGC, some of the things just get embedded in you. Like I'd love to hear that story and what's stayed with you and what you've brought back and how kind of athletics influenced that journey while you were out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the mission and I'll relate it back to athletics. And so on the mission, it's such a beautiful time, because for the most part, it's not about you, right? And this parallels to leadership, to sports, to being a husband, to being in business. And so how our days looked as a missionary was every day we were up at 6:30, no matter what. Up at 6:30, you hit the gym, right? The morning time is your time to be selfish. And by the way, I don't think it's bad to be selfish in this aspect, right? Because when you pour into your cup, you have more to pour into others. And so we'd go straight to the gym, we'd come home, we'd plan our day, we'd set the foundation and the intention for the day. Then we'd get into our studies. We'd have breakfast, get into our studies for the next hour or so. And then by 11 o'clock, we're out of the door. And the rest of the day, nothing is about us anymore. It's about who in the community can we help? Who in the community needs service, right? Who can we encourage today? And so I think this is very foundational for any in any aspect of life, right? You've got to focus and pour into your cup physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. You got to read. You got to do the things to build yourself. Um, but where the fulfillment comes is how you use that to serve other people, right? And I think that's why it was such a fulfilling experience for me. Is every single day, it wasn't about me. It was about who in the people around me can I bring purpose to? Who can I help and who can I love, right? And so it was a beautiful experience. I was there for 2 years, moved around between North and South Dakota, met people who had thrown their life away to drugs and alcohol, who were homeless, and everybody in between, right? And was really grateful for the opportunity to just connect with people, to learn more about where people are at, and more often than not, to just give them some encouragement, because I think that's what a lot of people need. And so, um, I think relating this to sports, right? If you're a leader, it's not about you, right? You've got to be locked in. You've got to focus and do your things. You've got to put in the work in the gym, nutrition, right? You've got to be an example. But then when it comes to game time, it's not about you. It's about your teammates or about your players if you're a coach. And I think that's probably one of the greatest things that I got out of that. And so now taking that, relating sports to the mission now to my life, right? It prepared me to be just an overall better human, right? I communicated with people all day long. I learned Spanish so that I could talk to Spanish people and help them, and I taught them English and taught them the gospel in Spanish. And so a lot of these things that I learned have been super valuable now as a husband, right? Um, Having that morning routine, right? Getting myself ready for the day, relying on whatever that is for you. Is that God? Is that source? Is that the universe, right? Connecting spiritually, um, and not being selfish, realizing it's not about you, right? It's about who you're with. It's about your family, the people you're with, or even if you're a college athlete right now, right? You might be like, I'm not finding any purpose in my schoolwork right now. Well, it's not about you. It's about who's around you, who you can pour into. And so I think that's some of the biggest things I learned from sports, from the mission to now, for sure.
So, how would you suggest to people that are not LDS members um, to have a similar experience from an exposure standpoint, from an opportunity standpoint?
Yeah.
Obviously, right, for the majority of people,
Yeah.
taking 2 years and going off and doing this service isn't necessarily in the cards. But how do
Yeah.
you take kind of, all right, I'm looking backwards, and this was what all came out of that. Hey, it's as easy as doing X,
Yeah.
right? For the rest of us. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think number one, pour into yourself, right? Study scripture, study whatever you feel called to study to develop yourself. And then get out and get in your community and serve. Go to homeless shelters, go to old folks' homes, do things for people that can do nothing for you. I think that's one of the true tests as a coach, as a leader, as a person is how you treat people who can do nothing in return for you, right? So if you're at a school, how do you treat your janitor, right? They're often looked at as the lowest of the low, but they're the ones who make the whole thing run, right? And so I think it's about service. So get in your community, do things, and take time to pour into others who can do nothing for you, right? And that can even be a daily practice, right? Um, and I think these things take effort, and most often, like the opportunities for us to pour into other people are a little bit outside of our comfort zone. Oh, go approach that person, right? That person looks down. That person at the lunch table is alone. Invite them over, right? Invite people into your space and pour into them. I think that's probably the best recipe for that. And so I think people think whatever their religion or whatever their faith or whatever their beliefs are. It's not just about you, right? It's not just about going up on top of a mountain and meditating, right? That's part of it, that could be part of it, but it's primarily how you use that to bless other people. And so, I mean, there's so many opportunities. There's different, there's shorter mission trips, there's local things in your community, and if you look for it, you'll find chances to serve other people. But but also just do it. Try to do a daily routine for the next 14 days. Set it and hit it for 14 days. And if you miss one day, don't miss the next, right?
Right. That's the Jerry Seinfeld. Don't break the streak.
Right.
All right, let's pivot to your current professional work. And I welcome your thoughts on I was gonna go be a college athlete. I got hurt. I'm not going to college right now.
Yeah.
I went and served a 2-year mission, came back, got married,
Yeah.
and now I got to figure out life. Talk a little bit about the hustle and the different things that you're trying to work through as you try to carve out a life that fits your needs versus the historical, right? Go get a job, work there 40 years, retire. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that and things you've tried, things you're looking forward to doing, why? Because I'm always curious on the back end, right? As an AD or as a coach or as a teacher, you're in
Yeah.
this kind of set life,
Yeah.
and we don't always think about, well, what if I want to do something else? Right. So
Yeah.
like I'd love to get your take on that because it's like kind of perma hustle, and I'm curious what you would advise.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is centered around my identity. Through high school, my identity was I'm an athlete. You know, I play basketball, I play football, I run track. That's my identity. I'm that athlete. And went to PGC camp and went to grad school, and Chad Sanji taught us about identity, right? And you hear about so many professional athletes or maybe even college athletes who once they're done playing, they go through this depression, this place where they have no idea what to do next. And that's because their identity is solely on being an athlete. And so I think for anybody, an athlete specifically or coaches, you've got to do some work and uncover what is your true identity, right? Are you an athlete? Are you a brother? You're probably a friend. You're probably a student. You're many things, a child of God. Like there's a million different things that you could label it as. And you need to realize, wow, I'm not just an athlete. I'm all of these different things. And so if one of those gets taken away, it's not a problem because this is who I am. I know that I am all of these things. And Chad did that exercise with me like a year and a half or 2 years before I tore my knee. And so I was better prepared when all of a sudden that was taken away from me, right? I still went through it. I still struggled, but I realized my whole identity isn't gone. A big part of it, right? A big part of my time and what I love to do is gone, but I'm still all of these other things. So I'm okay, right? I can find purpose in these other areas of life. And so that's when I, decided to start getting into videography. And for me, it was just something that I was passionate about, right? I had been interested in camera work. And I think each of us, whether we're athletes, coaches, anybody, have things that we're passionate about, things that we've tried. And I think we should pursue those things, right? And it's not always easy. We've got jobs, we've got work, we've got constraints. But I started pursuing that and walking that path. And um, I started out really bad. I made horrible videos. Like I laugh now at the videos I used to make, but I kept doing it. So I think for anyone who's wanting to transition to something else, you've got to be willing to suck. As athletes, we hate being bad. We hate having a bad game, right? It's horrible, but you have to be willing to suck. And so I sucked. I did horrible. And I made videos every single day. I watched videos every single day. I did videos for free for so long, for so many people. But I loved it and I kept doing it. And then as you do that, you'll start to get more opportunities, right? And I imagine, like, for example, starting a podcast, right? You're like, well, I'm just going to start this thing. And then it starts to roll. And then you get sponsors, you get people who want to be on, you get different things like that. And so I always knew that I wanted to do something I'm passionate about. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still work. It's not everything's amazing, right? It's still work, it's still hard. But I think it takes a lot of courage, but I think people should find out what they're passionate about, try different things, and then pursue it, right? And so, how that first started for me was after I had started getting paid, I drove down to Utah and knocked on the door of a business that I wanted to work at. A pretty big company on social media. They didn't really know me. I knocked on the door and said, I'm here to do work for free. And they were like, what? And I was like, yes, I'm here to make free videos for you. And they're like, okay. And they let me in and I started making videos every day, sending them to the marketing guy, sending them. And he's like, dude, this is really good. And I send him more, send him more. And then after a week or two, I had the position and the leverage and the value to say, I want a job. I want to work with you. And they said, cool, let's do it. Right. And so I learned there a ton about business, a ton that connected to sports. But uh, one of my favorite quotes is fortune favors the bold. Right? I love that. Fortune favors the bold. It's not going to come to you as you sit back and plan and think for years on end about what you want to do. You've got to start. You've got to start the podcast, write the book, right? And I think as you walk, the way will appear. And so I decided that if I'm not going to play college sports, you know, I definitely don't want to go to college, right? Struggled through high school. I got good grades, but super ADHD. I don't like sitting and learning about math. And so I decided let's give this a shot. And so here I am in the content creation, social media world, and it's afforded me a lot of really cool opportunities, and I feel really blessed. Um, and now I'm just trying to figure out, how can I take this to the next level, right? How can I continue to grow this? But I think for anybody who's out of sports, you got to just go try some things, right? Be willing to do some things for free and be willing to suck.
Well, that's the biggest thing, right? If you go back to what Gary Vee has said for years, just make content and just keep
Yeah,
producing and stay
yeah,
relevant. And if it's meant to be, it is. But if not, like at least you're getting better at what you're doing. And I laughed when you were saying I go back and watch my old stuff. Like you go back and watch the first couple episodes of this, it's a debacle.
right?
But you know what?
Yeah,
You're getting reps at learning how to have conversations, learning how to be curious, and I love that advice. And hopefully, some people who are, scratching an itch on the side can put a little energy into that and figure out some way to do what you love and get paid doing it.
yeah,
Um, Let me go with this since we were chatting about it before the pod, and we talk about growth mindset and how you constantly reevaluate, you're learning, you're pouring into yourself. I mean, you just quoted Rumi a second ago, right? It's like, okay, how do you take the time to be intentional about your beliefs, right? So, like, what is something that you've recently changed your mind on that you can point to and say, you know what, I used to be dug in over here, and now I'm over here, and here's why, and here's my rationale for it. Just as a matter of, and I say this pretty much on every episode now, but in the the time of polarization that currently exists, people don't listen to each other anymore. And so, like, how are you listening to yourself but challenging those beliefs? So I'm always curious about examples. So if you have one, if you have two, but things that you're intentional about, yeah, I don't believe that anymore.
yeah. Yeah, I think two things come to mind. The first thing, I got to go with talking about marriage. I'm newlywed, 2 or 3 months in. When I was younger, and I'll relate this back to sports as well, is I didn't want to get married till I had my life in order, right? I wanted to have a career. I wanted to be financially successful before I dated or married somebody. And I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe that that was in my best interest, right? I got married young, relatively young, you know, fresh off of a mission, no college, right? Not any sort of crazy career. But I think for me, I found someone who pushes me to be better, right? And that has exponentially multiplied my success, my drive, my focus, right? And how that relates to sports, right? Like, again, going back to us athletes don't want to be seen less than our peak, right? I wanted to have everything figured out. I'm the man. I've got everything. I've got a house. And that's just not how life works often, right? We want step 10, but we're not willing to take step one, you know? So that's the first thing I changed my mind on is that I should wait to get married. Personally, that's what I changed my mind on. Um, but just for anyone who's not maybe not pursuing dating or marriage, it's about who you surround yourself with, right? People want to isolate themselves until they're balling and have got it figured out. No, you should surround yourself with hustlers, with people who believe in you and people who are going to hold you accountable. Whether that's a partner or whether that's a friend, right? Or a mentor, you need those people in your life. You can't do it alone. That's the first thing. The second thing that I have changed my mind on, I think, as a teenager going into a young adult, you think you know everything and your way is the only way. You know everything, and everyone else who believes something different is wrong. Whether that's about life, whether that's about spiritual things, you know what's best. And I've changed my mind on that, right? Um, and for 2 years, that was I taught people, but I loved hearing other people's perspectives and taking bits and pieces from other people. And so I think it's okay to disagree, and it's okay, and you should seek out those conversations because that's where growth happens. When you're challenged as a coach, when you talk to another coach who believes in a different system, they're not right and you're not right, right? But you can take something from everybody, whether they are a different religion, a different race, from a different planet, right? You can take something from everybody, and just because someone believes something different doesn't mean that they're wrong.
I love that. It's funny you say that second one.
Yeah.
I sent my children a note this morning that I saw that says essentially, my children knew everything I told them today. I'm crushing it as a parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's so good. Um, let's wrap up with this, just because since we met each other, I kind of follow along from afar. You were writing these updates about your journey and your mission and those types of things. You post a lot. What are some of the things that we haven't touched on yet that are front of mind for you that's part of, what you're trying to share with the universe? I want to make sure, you have an opportunity to give as much of yourself as you can, and I don't want to miss anything. So what have we missed?
Yeah. Something that I would love to share that's been on my mind lately is around perspective. And this was a huge lesson for me as I tore my ACL. Two quick stories around this. Um, it's natural when things go wrong to turn inward. Poor me, this sucks. Life is so unfair. And and I think the quote that it is the mindset of the mediocre to desire fair treatment, right? And that doesn't mean we shouldn't push for equality or things in that kind of nature, but I mean if you want everything to be fair, perfectly right, everything to go your way, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be really disappointed because life is not fair. As an athlete, you're going to have a coach who's probably not fair. You're going to have referees who are not fair. You're going to have people who don't believe in you, right? But when I tore my ACL, it was all about me. This sucks initially. This hurts, and that's okay to feel it. But one day I was on crutches. For 7 weeks, no weight, which was hard. I'm used to running around, and I'm trying to hobble up these stairs outside of our school, and I'm cursing. This is stupid. This sucks. I'm over this. No one has it worse than me. And I get to the top of these stairs and onto the road, and I'm sweating and I'm cursing, and I look up, and in our parking lot at our school, we have a grove of trees, kind of like a flower bed. And the purpose of this is when someone in our community dies or someone in our school dies, they plant a little tree there as a memorial. And so I am so pissed off, and I get to the top of these stairs and I look up and I see these grove of trees. And instantly I was so humbled. Like here I am saying, poor me, life sucks. And there's people who didn't wake up today. There's people who would give anything to be in my position with a knee injury. Breathing fine, life is good. I've got family, I've got school, I'm okay, but I've got a knee injury. People would give anything to be where I'm at. And so immediately that just crushed my perspective and made me realize, I have nothing to complain about. And so that's the first story. The second is along the same lines, but at around this time, I was still football season. I had freshly torn my knee. We go to our team meeting before the game, and there was a guest captain who came in who was also on crutches. And I'm like, who's this? Like, he tore his knee too. We're probably in the same position. I totally can relate to him. We're both have horrible experiences. Life's not fair for us right now. Didn't know who he was. He gets up to speak to our team, and he shared that he didn't have a knee injury, he had cancer. And it was staged like 4, and he had like less than 6 months to live. And immediately, dude, I'm like in tears, and I'm like, how selfish and narrow-minded do you have to be to keep learning this lesson, right? Like, you are blessed to be where you're at. You've got a roof over your head, you've got clothes on your back, you've got food in the pantry, you've got friends, and here he is literally fighting for his life. And I'll never forget that as long as I live, right? And so I think it's all about perspective, right? And it's not about what happens to you, but it's about how you respond and how you show up for the next play. On the basketball court, ref makes a bad call, you've got to get to the next play. You do not have a second to go down, right? You've got to energize from that. And so that's probably the greatest message that I've loved sharing the last couple years is it's not about the events that happen to you, but it's about how you respond. And how you respond determines everything in life and sports. And for me, my response, which initially wasn't great, right? But as I worked on it, it has led to meeting my wife. It has led to my full-time career. It's led me to meeting a lot of really cool people. And I think the last thing that I'll share is um, the purpose of these struggles is not just for us, right? We're all given these mountains in our life to climb. And what a sad experience it would be to climb those mountains and get to the top and realize you have nobody with you, right? And so I think we're given these mountains to climb and these challenges to overcome. Number one, because they help us become who we need to be. They help us become better and a better version of ourselves. But number two, so that you can reach down and pull the people up with you, right? No matter what trial that we're going through, there's someone who's going to go through that same thing. And I think it's a privilege and an opportunity to be that light and to be that example for those people. Be a voice of hope. And that's why I love sharing my journey and talking about it. Most people go through experiences and they save the lessons in here. It's not for you, right? It's a gift that you need to share with other people. And so that's the biggest thing I've learned over the last couple of years is the purpose of those challenges, why they're in our lives, the perspective they give us, and the purpose really is so that we can help those around us.
No, absolutely. And I think that's an incredible wrap up and speaks to what you've said the whole time. Lead, have belief, bring energy, pick your attitude, right? How are you going to show up in these moments? I think that's lessons that we can all walk away with and try to embody as we navigate the universe, man. So glad I was able to finally pin you down. We had some fits and starts over the last 12 months, but we got it
Yep.
done, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.